Well, we can cross to Bonn in Germany now and speak with Vladimir Kara-Murza, one of those who has been returned. A very good evening to you. Good to see you. How are you feeling now you are free?
Good evening, Jonathan. It's really good to be in your programme, and I can tell you I'm saying this as sincerely as I can. The short answer is I'm feeling completely surreal. I know I'm on the screen now, but I feel as if I've been watching a movie these past 2 days, because I don't think I can find the right words to express in any language how it feels that 1 week ago I was sitting in a solitary confinement cell in a strict regime prison in Siberia. 2 days ago I was sitting in the infamous KGB prison in the Fortovo in Moscow that we know from the great books of Alexander Solzhenitsyn and Vladimir Bukovsky, among others. And now I'm standing here in the middle of Bonn, being on your program on Sky News. The only thing I can say is that days like the 1st of August of 2024 are those rare days in history when the impossible becomes possible. Because, you know, I can speak for myself, and I know I can also speak for a lot of my colleagues who were on that flight from Moscow to Ankara yesterday, that, you know, many of us thought that this was never going to be possible, and that we're going to end our lives in prison. And here I am standing and speaking to you. There's been quite a lot of criticism here in Germany, I know, over this difficult decision by the Scholz government to agree to this prisoner exchange, because of course one of the people exchanged from the Western side was an FSB officer by the name of Vadim Krasikov, although, as we were told yesterday by one member of our FSB convoy of the plane, that's not his real name, who, by some media accounts, is Putin's personal assassin, who has been sentenced to life in prison here in Germany for a murder on the streets of Berlin. And there's been a lot of criticism over the German government over this difficult decision. But you know what? Decisions in a democracy are very often difficult. Easy decisions only come in dictatorships, where everything is decided, you know, by the click of a finger of one man, and where everything is based on cynicism, on expedience, and on realpolitik. But to me, the biggest difference between a dictatorship and a democracy is that the highest value in a democracy is human life, and the protection of human life, and the saving of human life. And to those people who criticize decisions by democratic governments to engage in these exchanges with authoritarian regimes such as Putin, I would respectfully urge them to speak not of prison exchanges, but of saving human lives. I think it's very appropriate to say this here in Germany. Oskar Schindler, who saved thousands of lives in Nazi Germany, was given a ring by some of the people he helped save, with the words from the Talmud, the Jewish scripture, that somebody who saves one life saves the whole humankind. 16 human lives were saved during that ceremony in Ankara airport yesterday on the 1st of August 2024. And I think nothing can be more important in a democracy than saving human life.
Well, we are delighted, of course, to see you. Have you had a chance to speak to family members, friends, supporters? Have you met any of them yet?
The first person we met in Germany was Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who greeted us on the plane at Köln-Bonn International Airport. We were then immediately transferred to a medical facility for tests and evaluations and so on. And this news conference that we've just held here with my colleagues Ilya Yashin and Andrei Pivovarov, who were part of the political prisoner release yesterday as well, is really our first foray into the outside world. I'll see my wife and my children tomorrow morning. This will be the first time I will have seen them in more than 2 years, in 2 years and 4 months. In the 2 years and 4 months I've spent in Putin's prison, I was able to once speak on the phone with my wife and twice with my 3 children. And so I don't think I'll be able to find the right words in any language to even begin to express how I feel about seeing them tomorrow morning.
Well, they will be, of course, overjoyed and delighted. Tell me what your Russian minder said to you as you left prison and what your response was to him.
So very much in the old Soviet tradition, we were all accompanied yesterday on that flight from Moscow's Vnukovo airport, the government terminal, to Ankara, by an FSB convoy, convoy from the Russian Domestic Security Service, of course, a successor to the Soviet KGB. They've been organizing these prison exchanges from the Soviet side since the 70s. Of course, the first prison exchange between the East and the West, in terms of political prisoners, was in December of 1976 at the Zurich International Airport, when Vladimir Bukovsky, prominent, a legendary Soviet dissident, the prisoner of conscience, was exchanged for the Chilean Communist Party leader Luis Corvalán. That exchange was negotiated by the US government. Bukovsky was also accompanied by the KGB special squad. So were we yesterday. Each of us, each of the 16 prisoners being released on the Russian side, had our own personal FSB minder or convoy member, whatever the right term is. And as our plane was taking off in Vnukovo, in Moscow airport, the FSB guy next to me, obviously I didn't know his name, I didn't know his rank because they're all wearing civilian clothes, he turned to me and said, "Look out the window, it's the last time you're seeing your motherland." And I turned to him. I think I laughed for the first time in a long time, because I'm a historian by education. And I told him that not only do I feel, not only do I believe, I know that I will be back in Russia, that I will be back in my home country. And I told him, I think it's going to be much, much quicker than he could ever think.
I'm interested to get your thoughts on what former Russian President Dimitri Medvedev said today. He said, "Let the traitors now feverishly select new names and actively disguise themselves under the witness protection programme." It sounds like a threat. I'm thinking of what happened to the Skripals, Sergei Skripal. Do you worry that you will always be looking over your shoulder?
Well, look, first of all, I mean, as a journalist, you know the importance of evaluating the source before sort of evaluating the words. And Mr. Medvedev has long become a complete joke, even by the standards of Putin's regime propaganda. But behind sort of the joke source here, the words are, of course, very serious. And look, there's nothing new in them. We all know the risks. We all know the dangers. My closest friend, Russian opposition leader Boris Nemtsov, was assassinated on Putin's orders. Shot dead in front of the Kremlin in February of 2015. Alexei Navalny, another Russian opposition leader, was murdered in prison on Putin's orders in February of this year, 2024. I myself have been poisoned twice by a special FSB squad. So were many other opposition figures and Kremlin critics in Russia. And we know that these attacks have happened well beyond Russian territory. And you in the UK, of course, know this particularly well. And so, you know, the word safe is not a word we as Russian opposition politicians usually have in our vocabulary. But look, I believe in what I do. I believe in my country. I care about my country. I love my country. However much these words have been soiled by the Kremlin propaganda, I mean them sincerely. I love my country. I love Russia. And I think that Russia deserves so much better than being run by a corrupt, murderous, authoritarian KGB-led dictatorship. I think Russia deserves to be a normal, modern, democratic European country. I have absolutely no doubt, as a historian, that that day will come. And as a politician, I'm going to do everything that I can, everything in my power, to try to bring that day a little bit closer.
You mentioned Navalny there. Your thoughts must be with him today. Do you think that perhaps, if things had been different, he could have been part of this prisoner swap?
Well, this sort of goes back to what we discussed with you in your first question. I cannot help but think yesterday and today about Alexei Navalny, and to think that if these processes had worked a little faster, if the government here in Germany had to overcome less resistance to the idea of such a prisoner exchange, maybe Alexei could have been here with us. We know that he isn't. But I think, again, and I repeat this because I think this is very, very important, to all those here in Germany and in the West more generally, who criticize the idea of these prisoner exchanges by sort of putting forward the argument that they only encourage more hostage-taking, that they only encourage more arrests of political prisoners, that they only encourage more repressions towards regime opponents in Russia. First of all, repressions will continue regardless of whether there are prisoner exchanges or not, because that's the nature of dictatorships. This is what they do. They persecute their opponents. They try to gag their opponents. They try to eliminate their opponents. And it doesn't matter if, if there's willingness on the other side to save these people or not. They will continue to behave in this way regardless. The only difference that this willingness or the absence of it on the Western side can make is whether some human lives can actually be saved from the hands of these dictators, as 16 human lives were by that exchange in Ankara airport on the 1st of August 2024. That is the real question facing democratic governments, facing democratic nations, facing those countries that pride themselves of being based on such notions as the protection of human rights and human freedoms. And so to all those who criticize exchanges such as the one that happened in Ankara, I want to say that nothing can be more important than saving human life. And this is the most important outcome of what happened in Ankara yesterday.
You must be utterly exhausted, so this is my final question, I promise. So what are your plans? You talked about your wife and your family. What are your plans for the next few days and beyond?
You know what? 2 days ago, I was in Lefortovo prison in Moscow. As I mentioned, a week ago, I was in my solitary confinement cell in Siberia. Actually, the night I was taken from my cell in Siberia to be transferred in Moscow, as I now know in preparation for this exchange, I was actually certain I was being led out to get executed. So I think, plans and thoughts about what's going to come in the future haven't really been on the top of my mind in these last few days. I'm just taking things as they come, and just to stress this again, everything feels utterly surreal. The only thing I can think about now is that tomorrow morning, for the first time since the spring of 2022, I will see my wife and my 3 children. And this is not only the most important thing, this is the only thing I can think of now. And this is my only plan, and I cannot tell you how much I'm looking forward to that morning coming.